I'm the amateur logician. We're going to explore the intellectual virtues and how we all can develop them. Traditionally, a classical scholastic education would mention the virtues of understanding, science, wisdom, and also art and prudence. While we're going to classify and demarcate these important virtues, what's really more important for us is to take action to habituate disciplines that cultivate them. That's key. In fact, any virtue whatsoever takes persistence and cultivation so that it becomes a kind of second nature in us. In a manner of speaking, a virtue is a good habit that becomes a part of us. But first, we're going to think about Aristotle's classification of the sciences. And the sciences Aristotle thought about in terms of the aim of a science and its objects. Our goal, really, is to go from reason to the truth. So reason must be based, I would say, on openness plus acceptance to reality. And truth is just what is reality. And reason really is just a means to obtain truth. And the intellectual virtues are going to help us move to the truth, to help us conform to the truth, and to live a life of truth, of reason. So first we're going to think about science. Well, what is a science? Well, science is a study of something. It's a systematic, organized body of thought based on some first principles and methodology, looking for explanations, causes, and laws. Now, Aristotle thought of scientific knowledge as something to classify based on the aim and object. So one aim is to produce or make something. We can think about the science of engineering, for example. We can also have a science of rhetoric or fine art. These are possible objects. These objects are domains of the productive science. Another aim can be practical, not in the sense of making things, but of guiding human action. This is where ethics comes into play. Ethics is indeed a science. We can objectively figure out some basic moral principles. Finally, the aim can be totally theoretical. This is when knowledge is sought only for its own sake, not for some other reason. That's what the liberal arts were about in contrast to the so-called servile arts. Theoretical knowledge takes us not only to philosophy or ontology, but the natural sciences like physics or biology. So we can think about first philosophy as a philosophy of ontology, thinking about being qua being, epistemology, the theory of knowledge, and so forth. And second philosophy about physics, biology, chemistry, astronomy, and so forth. But also mathematics, of course, would be another theoretical discipline. To be sure, there's obvious overlap here. And Aristotle knew this, by the way. He certainly wasn't confused on this as an ancient philosopher. Obviously, Aristotle's knowledge about physics or chemistry was extremely limited vis-a-vis today. But he knew that these things overlapped. Knowing physics, for example, is vital to good engineering. Geometry is useful in building a house, and so forth. Yet, while physics or geometry can be studied in a totally theoretical way, engineering is specifically for the purposes of building and designing. Now, intellectual virtues can help us in all of the sciences. And we have the speculative intellect, and then we have the practical intellect. And that's how we're going to divide this out, and how traditionally this has been divided out. The speculative intellect is concerned with the theoretical. The practical intellect is basically concerned with both, as the name suggests, the practical and the productive. So first we have the virtue of understanding, and that deals with first principles and applying them. A first principle would include the law of contradiction. Something can both be and not be in the same manner, time, and respect. Think about how many times people violate this law. They say one thing, and then the next moment they say something that's totally contradictory, and we ourselves can do this if we're not careful. So developing our understanding should be done by learning some logic and slowing down to understand any given argument presented carefully to determine if it violates the laws of logic. It's just a muscle we have to use and develop. Otherwise, that muscle will deteriorate. It will be weak. The virtue of science is about reasoning and thinking about intelligible things we find out there in the world. So we're thinking about the empirical sciences, in part. It's also a habit of doing mathematics well and being able to apply it. But also we can even further this and say it also would apply to praxeology, the study of or science of human purposeful action and what that entails. Now, wisdom is the highest virtue of the speculative intellect. This is where we start to develop a philosophical maturity in our thinking and our contemplating. So we have metaphysics, also known as ontology, the study of being as being. What does it mean to exist in general? It deals with natural theology, where we can think about God's existence or non-existence. We can think about how metaphysics, based on things like the principle of sufficient reason, principle of causality, and so forth, demand an uncaused causer, or something that's foundational, that is just being itself. It also will include revealed theology. There's a famous joke, whatever you can do, I can do meta. So being able to reason about metaphysics is a part of wisdom. But it takes practice like anything. It's a muscle that can be developed by reading Plato, Aristotle, and some contemporary philosophers. It definitely can be done. Next, let's think about the practical intellect. Again, we have the virtue of art. That's about making things. It's not something that can be totally explicit, so to speak. There's a doing involved that cannot entirely be articulated. And with the virtue of prudence, there's actually a lot to unpack there. That's about right thinking in action, and that concerns ethics. It's a habit of right thinking about our actions. It ties into the moral dimension of being a human being. It's the measure of the so-called other cardinal virtues, which would include justice, giving someone his due, courage, and temperance. Not overindulging in the passions, being able to control our appetite. And courage is about doing the right thing in the face of great danger, for example. Or even mild danger, because sometimes we can develop anxious patterns of thinking. But we have to be courageous in those situations to do the right thing. We are rational beings in any case, so acting should be done in a rational way. That's why prudence is essential. Because what we have to do, we might say, move from knowledge of reality to having that inform our decisions, and that should move us to action. Prudence deals with concrete, specific action. In a way, it's the ability to judge a particular course of action. That needs foresight, because every action has uncertainty. Prudence is about both the end of our action, or the goal, but also the means to obtain that goal. It's about proper execution. It's based on an acceptance of reality, and, so to speak, being true to reality. That requires memory and open-mindedness. So in general, we can say that prudence has a lot of different components. You need foresight to look into the future. You need circumspection. You need to be cautious. You need to use your reasoning. You have to engage in good valuation of things. You need sagacity. That is discernment, good discernment. You need docility, which is an ease of applying oneself or doing what needs to be done. You need good memory. You need memory of past events to help judge future events, right? But you also need inventiveness, because you're going to be dealing with new situations, new circumstances. So on the one hand, while we should think about the classification of prudence, we should try to develop prudence. But traditionally, developing prudence is not done in isolation without developing justice, courage, and temperance. These things rise or fall together. If one is lacking, this is going to pull the other virtues down in terms of the cardinal virtues. It really does take persistence and cultivation to develop these virtues. To conclude, the intellectual life and the moral life shouldn't be detached from each other. Alas, for many people it is. Someone knowledgeable is not necessarily a good man. But if we aim high and try to conform ourselves with the true, good, and beautiful, we can grow both intellectually and morally. How do we do this? We have to search. We have to develop our understanding of first principles, expand our horizons in the sciences, and seek philosophical wisdom. Philosophy should transform our core being, in a manner of speaking. Be curious, learn, study, form habits around this. Aim at persistently cultivating the intellectual virtues. Do a deep dive in logic. Read good philosophy books. Study some physics and mathematics. Live a holistic life that is open to exploring the wonders of this universe and the wonders inside your soul. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comment section below. I would appreciate that a lot. This will be a part of the playlist called Knowledge and Logical Reasoning. I've attempted to put together some good videos, and I think you'll enjoy watching through that playlist. If you want more, visit my website at amateurlogician.com. I have an extensive tutorial on traditional verbal style logic. I'm trying to get back in the groove in terms of creating a new logic course, but life happens and things definitely take time. I also have a lot of videos on induction. That's a new playlist on my YouTube channel. And of course, I have a playlist on the Suppies and Hill textbook, First Course in Mathematical Logic, and that has about 50 videos or so where you can learn basic symbolic logic, propositional logic, predicate logic. It has some bonus videos that expand upon areas that are missing in that textbook. But anyways, I definitely appreciate your viewership. Good luck to you and be well. Thank you for watching again.